Hi, and welcome back to the New Zealand Property Podcast and Video Series, sponsored by Property Ventures Real Estate. And I'm Mark Honeybone, and I'm lucky enough to have Jarrod Kerr, the Chief Economist from the Kiwi Bank today. How are you doing, Jarrod?
G'day, Mark. I'm doing well.
And you might remember Jarrod from about a year ago. We did a podcast video. I won't say similar to this because we're a bit of unusual times right now, Jarrod, but it was great to have you there. And I remember I heard you not long beforehand speak to a group of people. And what I loved about you, economists around New Zealand, everyone understood what you were saying. So hopefully today will be the same, even though in this crazy wee world we're in at the moment. So first of all, welcome along, and you've been surviving the last 3 weeks, okay?
Yeah. I don't actually mind working from home, to be honest. I get a lot more done. I get to work earlier too.
Yeah. I'm working out as an hour travel I'm saving, plus there's probably an hour extra work, so it's probably 2 hours I'm saving a day at the moment by working from home. So that's all good. Okay, well, first things first, and I know it's nothing to do with what you can answer really, but I'll say is level 3 next week, mate. End of next week.
Yeah, hopefully. We're hoping that's the way it goes. I think we're in a position now where we can actually have this discussion and actually look to an exit strategy now that our infection rates are obviously very low, and the outcomes that we're getting on that front are pretty good.
Yeah, and it would have been a different conversation we're probably having 3 weeks ago. There was so much unknowns, and there still are many unknowns. But one known is, I guess, we are doing pretty well as a country so far. And I guess even last night, the news coming out here, Australia's done pretty well with not having the lockup quite like we have. Probably puts a bit of pressure on the government next week to open it up a bit so people like ourselves can go outside and work and a few other bits and pieces. So I imagine that'll be one of the things we're thinking about to start off with.
Yeah, I think it. Oh, sorry, you're cutting out. Yeah, I think it's critical that we look at the success that we've had is one thing, but the economic impact is huge, and it's just in 4 weeks. So if we were to go another 4 weeks, it obviously gets that much worse, and it's a bit of an exponential impact. The longer we're locked down, the worse it's going to get. So I think we're at a point now where we can start to open up again, and I think it's critical to get as many businesses back up and running as possible, safely.
Yeah, that's right. It's in fact, I heard an AM show this morning a pretty unfair question from Duncan to the leader of National and saying what's worse, having 9 people who have died or 800,000 people out of work. And he answered it really well, I thought, by just saying 800,000 or even 200,000 people out of work is a pretty big catastrophe for the country. And I suppose that's a bit of what we talked about here is, what effect this thing will have. Whether it's 100,000 or 800,000 people, I'm sure it won't be to that extent. But if it goes for too much longer, yeah, that could quite possibly happen, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's the question that we should be asking too, because rise in unemployment has a huge impact, but it also has a well-being impact. The stresses that puts on families, and you get other issues arising, from that we need to think about.
Yeah. Well, I've got lots of wee questions I can ask you, but I guess I'll give you the go first to the overall economy and what have you. How you think, what you're seeing, what you're hearing on how this is all going to unfold. And I've got my own reasons why I think different things, but you're the expert far more than me, so that's why I've got you here to talk today. So you want to tell sort of listeners, I guess, on how and why you think things will happen with the economy and obviously here we've got an audience of investors and home buyers. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, we crunch numbers to try and figure out what's going on right now, and a lockdown of 4 weeks, takes about 12% off GDP in the quarter that we're in, and if it's extended or even level 3, for another 4 weeks, and then maybe a level 2, these sorts of restrictions really suffocate growth. And what we're looking at is trying to figure out, how many companies actually pop out the other side, and which ones might not make it. There'll be a few in there that probably wouldn't have survived in a good in a good world, but there are, I think, a lot of companies at risk, when they pop out of lockdown having not had any income for 4, 6, 8 weeks, whatever it is. As a bank, we've seen a huge spike in people asking for mortgage deferrals, or even just going on to interest only, paying off just the interest, but leaving the principal for another day just to help them through this. I think that's great. And then from businesses, we've had quite a spike in businesses coming to us asking about the finance that's available, and is it guaranteed by the government, and what does this mean for them? It's basically just cheap money to get you through this next 1, 2, 3, 6 months. The fact that we've seen such a huge amount of inquiry suggests that there's a lot of people and businesses out there that are worried. How we come out of this is really difficult to estimate, and we're all making calls and predictions and throwing darts basically, but it looks like we'll come to some sort of normality by the end of next year. Some industries like tourism will be hurt for a lot longer, as I think borders stay closed, stay shut for that much longer. But even if our border was to open up, what are the other borders doing around the world? So I think tourism could be hurt for a while. And then there's retail, which I think the structural change that was going through there onto online would just be sped up, and there'll be some big changes in there. But then there's a lot of our good sort of old-fashioned farmers and other businesses that will just come flying through this as if nothing happened. So overall, we think, big fall this year, but then start to bounce back next year, and where we go from sort of 2022 and beyond, there will be some structural changes, but I'm hoping most things bounce back.
So you're thinking 2 or year and a half to sort of recover, and I guess it's still not true to recover because what falls over it right now falls over. But you're thinking a year and a half for the general economy to get back, plus property and stuff. I guess we probably a wee bit of a different subject at the moment, but it take that long to do it.
Yeah, it's really hard to put time on this because I can't tell you how long the lockdown is going to last.
Yeah.
If the lockdown lasts, we go to level 3, but we're still in lockdown, lasts another 6 to 8 weeks, then we kind of know that that's what our central view is. But if for whatever reasons we start getting a lot more flare-ups and infections and clusters popping up, over the country, then that means we're going to be locking down parts of the economy again. And this could linger, for the rest of the year, in which case we really don't know. We're going to start bouncing out of this. We can only hope that it's into next year, but there's a lot of uncertainty around that.
Yeah, as you're saying, the bounce, I guess it's a good way to explain it, because that's what hopefully won't too much, but could happen, as I said, as we go out of it, then you have to go back into it again. And the more that happens, I think what happens straight away when this was announced, as you alluded to already, the businesses that were struggling already have gone. And I guess if it happens again, once we sort of go back, the next tier of businesses will go for good. I mean, some are going to have to close down for a while or do whatever they have to do. I'm thinking, I know, pretty closely related to a travel company, and geez, who'd want to be in that industry at the moment with the lack of overseas travel for the next year and a half. But for me, I'm thinking companies like that would almost have to they just cease trading, just do minimal they can, and unfortunately probably get rid of some people and then keep them what they've got on board, and then restart again when the time's right. So again, that bounce, I guess, it could take quite some time for that to happen, and then for the economy to bounce back to where we like it was 4 or 5 weeks ago. Doing quite nicely, thanks.
Yeah. And another thing that, a lot of our customers are coming to us saying, I'm a business and I do this, that, the next thing. When we come out of lockdown, I'm going to open up, sure. But I'm worried that we have to go back into lockdown. And what I'm worried about is the cost of reopening my business only for it to be closed 2 weeks down the track. So, the more clarity we can get out of the government around what level 3, what level 2 looks like, and whether firms will just simply be shut back down in another lockdown is important. I think there's a lot of companies actually quite worried about reopening.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. There's obviously cost in that, and also the rehiring people and then having to refire people, I guess, is a pretty scary thought for every party involved.
Yeah.
Um,
And what all that means for property is fascinating. It's a situation where I think, commercial property will be quite interesting as to how that plays out in the next few years. There will be a lot of companies that will look at the floor space they have, how they work, and whether there's a way to reduce that. And then if we do get a spike in companies that default, there could be, more lease space up for grabs. It does look like a softening in commercial space, and then if our economic numbers are anywhere near right, then we're going to get a decent lift in unemployment, which means that there will be an impact on residential house prices as well.
Yeah, well, commercial is certainly one thing I think will be the hardest hit with property around, and as you alluded to again already, is the different ways of doing business that might occur once this happens. And people were sort of setting up home, and like us, we had to think, geez, how can we save money? How can we eliminate our expenses, sort of thing? And everyone's been doing that. And one of them might be, actually, it does work for working from home, sort of thing. So, yeah, commercial, a bit of a scary circle at the moment. I know our commercial place we lease for our office, for example, we've got the fantastic clause that come in after the earthquakes, where we can walk away and not pay anything. I think they were just overjoyed that we're willing to pay them something. Not what we were, but willing to pay them something, and they're more than happy to have us and want us for the long term, obviously. So, yeah, there might be some check leases coming up in 6 months or so. Yeah, it'll be interesting times for commercial, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think the smarter landlords will be the ones that will provide the most assistance now, in hope that their tenant stays when we open back up again.
Yeah, 100%. First home, Bob, I mean, I'm trying to think residential part of the market who's taken a hit, in my opinion. Probably more the first home buyer type people, younger professionals looking at buying property are the ones that perhaps taken a hit at the moment with their Kiwi saver. Is one thing taking a hit, but also a lot of those people, I guess, are the ones who are just maybe looking at unemployment, or certainly had reduction of wages. Would that be a fair comment to think that? Or
I think they're definitely going to be, I guess, disproportionately hurt because they're the ones trying to save and trying to get into the property market for the first time. But then again, prices may become cheaper. I think in terms of the labour market, it's really going to be, your tourism, your retail, your financial services. These sorts of industries are the ones that are going to get hit, I think, the hardest, and may take the longest to recover. And I think the problem with the resi market at the moment is we've got no activity. So the whole market's just been snuffed, it's suffocated, right? There's nothing going on. We look internally, and there's no applications, there's no our mobile mortgage managers, well, obviously not mobile, and they're just dealing with old requests and anything that they can do to help customers at the moment. They're not doing anything new. And I think we're going to open up into winter, which is already a pretty awkward time of year to sell a house. And the dwellings that remain on the market, I think, may be seen as ones that are slightly, more in need of being sold.
yeah,
if you know what I mean, they might be a little bit more willing to accept a lower price for whatever reason, and the ones that are taken off are clearly the people who have the ability to weather the storm.
yeah.
So the influence on price, I think, is that clearly to the downside for those sorts of reasons. And then you're just going to take some demand away with a rise in unemployment and uncertainty in labour.
Yeah, for me, that's the big unknown, is that demand, how big of or not a big effect, how much is that going to be taken away? I mean, a lot of people now, we know you had 3 deals cancelled immediately within 3 days of this happening. but these other people sort of just waiting. So yeah, there's a certainly big proportion of people who just can't buy now, and how big that is, I don't know. That's 30% or 50% or whatever it is. But then there's a big percentage also just sitting on their hands at the moment, waiting. I suppose. It's
Yeah.
interesting because we're coming off. Back the stats coming out today. I think last month was one of the highest months of property increases that we've sort of ever had in recent times. And the market was going really well, and there was a shortage of homes. That'll be interesting, sort of what happens in such an interesting market, especially in Auckland right now, because we've had such a hard time for 2 or 3 years, but the last 5 months has been bloody great. And but some of those, and you just said before about some of those vendors they couldn't sell 2 years ago, they couldn't sell a year ago. They've just gone back in the market again. Obviously, the property's not the perfect property to sell, and now they're going to be in that situation again. And that could be where there are some really good buys, I guess, now, while other people are still sitting there waiting to think what's going to happen, I guess. So, hey, is now the best time to buy, or is it actually going to be in 3 to 6 months when there are a whole lot more properties that go on the market? That I do think will happen. But it's in, I guess, is how many buyers there are, but it's the unknown factor from.
Yeah, it's well, highly uncertain, right? I think it was good to point out that we came into this year with a lot of momentum and some pretty decent confidence in the market after a couple of years of correction, if you like, in Auckland, and then that's bounced right back. And I think the if we remember back to sort of December, January, we were looking into this year thinking, we're going to get another 7, 8, 9, 10% growth, having already just recorded on this morning's number, nearly 10% growth over the last year. So that was a decent bounce back. But now we're in, highly uncertain times. The rug's just been pulled out for however many months, and I think that that uncertainty will cause a lot of people just to step back and go, right, I don't really need to buy that investment property today. I don't really need to sell my house today. And I think that drop in activity will persist, into spring, and it'll be between what happens now and spring that's important in terms of the exiting the lockdown, and then seeing what sort of damage is done to the labour market and the economy in general, as to how things play out later in the year. But on our guesstimates, and they are nothing more than guesstimates, we think house prices will fall, nearly 10% this year, just on this disruption alone, before bouncing back next year.
When you say 10%, are you thinking just that generically around New Zealand, or just Auckland, or?
That's just the aggregate for the housing market in New Zealand, which, as you know, is a pretty sort of meaningless number, really. That I think we'll get more of a shock in Auckland, and I think some of the regions will definitely give up some of the extraordinary gains that they've made in the last few years. I mean, I think today's numbers showed was the Hawke's Bay and Gisborne still up around 17% on the last year, and that's on top of 15% the year before that, and they've had extraordinary gains. So I think that stops. They come closer to a flat year, and I think Auckland, obviously the largest city, recording a decline brings down that number. So maybe Auckland falls by more than 10% because financial hub.
Yeah, in fact, people get sick of me talking about Auckland property market, I think, and it's quite weird in a way, because I used to be the other way inclined up to 5 years ago. But had a couple of questions about the Hawke's Bay and other places like that. And I know that go back 4 weeks ago, before this thing started, was I was sort of going, it's quite an unusual property cycle, this one anyway, before this come in, for the fact that the usual happened, I guess, up to about 3 or 2 years ago, and Auckland went and everywhere else went, sort of thing. And then Auckland sort of died and we stayed there, but the rest of the country just kept on going. And 10 years ago and 20 years ago, it kept going for a year or so, but it just kept on going and going. And even to the places now, like in the Hawke's Bays and the Blenheim, I know a lot about, there's just nothing there. And there's multi-offers every single time, and it's going higher and higher. And what's going to be this thing that eventually stops it? I sold in a place in Blenheim myself about 3 years ago. So I was going, boy, it can't get any higher. It's kept on going for 3 years. And here I'm on the middle of the game, sort of thing. And I guess this might be that instigator, because it doesn't matter whether you're from Auckland or Eketahuna. I mean, sorry, people from Eketahuna. But it doesn't really matter. I guess the people have lost jobs, and wages are decreasing in all those areas. I guess, and this economic thing that's going on in front of us is not going to hide anyone, I suppose. So there might not be as many people buying in those areas than there were 4 weeks ago, like there are in Auckland.
Yeah, a lot of what we've seen, obviously Auckland went really hard for a number of years and then came off for a year and a half, 2 years. And then the regions really carried on. What we saw was a lot of people leaving Auckland. That sort of the population of Auckland was still growing because of a number of migrants coming in or Kiwis coming home.
Mm.
But then there was a huge exodus of Aucklanders out into the regions, and the regions closest to Auckland have performed particularly well. And we've all got stories of friends that we know have got and bought a mini mansion for the price of a townhouse in Auckland type stuff. Maybe not Hawke's Bay anymore, but certainly other areas. And it's been a good retirement trade, if you like. Sell your Auckland property, go into a region and unlock some cash. And I think that sort of flow will continue. What I think would be interesting is that in this post-pandemic world, will the regions actually be even more attractive? Do you want to live in a 12-story apartment with 200 other people, or do you want to live in a lower density area with a great view? And given the move to being able to work online and do things differently, maybe we will get more people into the regions.
Yeah, that will be a really interesting. Yeah, that's something I thought about too, whether that will happen or not. The other thing is too is how quickly we go back to our old ways. We're sitting here now at the moment going, geez, it's been nice to think about things and refocus and reevaluate different bits and pieces. But a month from level 2 or level 1 or no level, how quickly maybe we do go back to that. The other question with that is expat Kiwis. I don't know if you've had much of a think about that or talk about that. Obviously, I'd say that a lot have come back now. Many might want to stay. Will there be enough to, I guess, help the market a little bit?
Yeah.
How many people, how many expat Kiwis are there overseas? I mean, there's a whole lot, I know that.
Yeah. I'm not sure on the actual numbers, but I think it's hundreds of thousands Kiwis that live overseas. And just within my own network of friends, there was 3 of us left living overseas a few years ago. Of our big group of friends, a lot of us all went overseas, did OE and whatever, and came back at different times. Here we are in our mid-40s, and there was 3 left. All 3 of us have now moved back to New Zealand. The last one coming from Bangkok just a month ago, and he won't move. He'll stay here now. So I think living in these bigger cities and all of that's attractive, but then you get to a point where where would you rather be in a lockdown, in New Zealand or in Thailand? Pretty clear where you'd want to be.
Yeah, 100%. So that'll be interesting, and I'm secretly hoping that a few of them want to buy places like Alexandra Park that we're selling at the moment, because I guess they have a particular type of thing. I mean, if they do, geez, 100,000 come back to New Zealand, 50,000, that's good for the economy, I guess. And a lot of those people have been over, they've done the hard yards, they've got some money, got themselves a good financial situation. So that could be one plus, I guess, for the economy in some smaller fashion.
Yeah, we've just gone through the biggest migration boom we've ever seen, and it's been incredible, and it's still a big net inflow, up until a few weeks ago. It is a real Kiwi thing to do your OE or even get a good amount of experience overseas, bring back some pounds or some euros or dollars, and come back to God's country. And we've seen that, and that has been a huge driver of property for a while now. That migration boom we went through is the largest ever recorded. So I think that will possibly continue, at least the Kiwi element of that. The flip side is actually Kiwis not leaving. So what we've seen is fewer Kiwis leaving and heaps coming back. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think this time around we may see more still just coming back, but even fewer leaving,
Yeah,
which
well,
again just puts more demand here.
yeah, which is a good thing for our little wee country at the bottom of the earth, sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, and I can see that more and more the immigration, just there's going to be so much pressure on the whoever the government is, to let people in, because it's becoming far more attractive every day. And I guess that's one of the strong things we've got about our economy is that, and even through this crisis here, I believe quite a bit of our farmlands and farmers who have been given a bit of a hard time in the recent decades, and sort of thing. But milk and fruit and when dairy, product and meat and stuff are still flowing out, which has been at the moment probably the best thing for New Zealand. That stuff is happening. So I guess the long term prognosis of New Zealand is probably pretty good, I would think.
Model housing is what's population doing, right? Is your population going up sideways, or is it declining like it is in some parts of the world like Japan and Italy? Our population doesn't peak, and we've got estimates going out 100 years. The reason our population doesn't peak is not because of fertility rates or anything that we're doing to here. It's because we import people. So long as we keep bringing people in, then our population will never peak. Now that'll become a sensitive issue, as I think it already is, around how many people we allow to come in, day out. The reason it's become a sensitive issue is because there's not enough housing out there. So when we model it, we've come up with a number, which is a guess, of $130,000 just looking at what our population has done over the last 10, 20, 30 years and how many houses that we've built over that time. So we haven't built enough. What we are seeing, or what we had seen, up until a few weeks ago, was quite a decent lift in the number of dwellings being built. So the supply was definitely increasing, but demand was still there.
So I just cut out there. My reception's not that great, unfortunately. I'm hosting this thing. These 130,000 houses still behind we are.
Yeah, and that was based on our last estimation. Things will change, but there's no way we're going to lose our shortage of dwellings in a hurry. It's going to take, I think, years, if not a decade, to build enough to meet the demand, the shortfall that we've got.
Right. To talk different types of housing. That's what people here are listening to us for in one way, I guess, is new builds. I mean, there's a couple of ways of new builds. There's some people are going to be thinking, developers are going to fall over maybe and what have you, and some will, the good ones won't. One thing that why I personally like new builds is because the government's made it so damn hard for investors with old stock. In recent years, and a lot of them have been brought now by homeowners, the old ones, I guess, and you've got a choice now between a new one insulated or heat pumps or what have you, or an older ones. Some people like the new ones, and especially tenants, they have to have it to a good standard. What do you think about new builds? Lots of terrace houses and apartments sort of being built. Blocks, we sell quite a few between 9 and sort of 30 or 40 in a block. Do you think there's still going to be a demand for that? And I guess by what you're just saying, there will be, but in due course. But
yeah, definitely. I mean, for any of you out there who have lived outside of New Zealand, I imagine a lot of you have, we've all come from high density cities. I've come from Sydney. I also lived in Singapore. I've seen high density and I've seen how it works. And I really like a lot of what they do in Singapore and just building these huge, apartment complexes and making them available to Singaporeans at a really cheap price. I think we can learn a bit from that. And the younger generations today, are much more willing to live in a higher density dwelling. The quarter acre dream of our parents and grandparents, I think, is still their dream, but not necessarily ours. And I think we need to cater to the changing in culture as well. We are actually importing a lot of Asian people here who come from a higher density background and who don't want to live on a quarter acre block. They do love the townhouse or the apartment, and the apartment where they move into here is twice the size of the apartment that they've come from, and it's a better quality. It's not going to fall over, and it's not going to crack, and it's got insulation, etc. So yeah, I think the more new builds we do, the better, because as I said before, we've got a huge shortage. And I think we need to realise that higher density is the way that we solve a lot of our problems.
Yeah, 100%. I think I just had a friend who just come back from this. He took a year off work and just toured around the States. That's all he did for 10 months. And he worked for a building company. He's just come back and starting for another one at the moment. And he's saying what he found over there all around the States was here is New Zealand are 5 years behind him. And what he was saying, they had a lot of terrace housing there, which is all good, that we need. And then but the last 5 years over there, they've started building these types of apartments, sort of 20 or 30, in a block, or 40 in a block, and not in the middle of town, and sort of suburbia, I guess, around the place. And he said that's two things. One, it's good for the town, because, as you just said, we need more property. And I guess where you can put 8 terrace houses, you might well put 40 or 30 apartments. And the other thing is they're single level, and some people, especially older people, they don't want to go up and down stairs. They can go up in a lift in one of these places. Well, that's a real win for them. So I guess that's another way. And we've seen some developers do that, and we've got a really good mix at the moment of what we've seen. I guess that's another way we can alleviate a part of that problem, which will, I guess, help.
Yeah, and it's shared costs too, right? And I mean, the other thing is when you're in an apartment or you're owning a townhouse, right? You're on a strata of some description. You are sharing the cost of maintaining and insuring. And for me, that was the first property I bought, was a townhouse, a little tiny townhouse in Sydney, and it was a great sort of introduction to ownership.
Yeah. Okay, so for all the investors, property investors, or probably people sitting here listening at the moment, some might be buying, just brought their first, and some might have 50 or 100 properties. What's your advice to them? Whether they've got a new build, an older house, or whatever they have, I guess it's minimise expenses and looking at ways to save money, is it?
Yeah, look, I think the main message is we're in highly uncertain times, and anyone who comes and says to you, "I know exactly what's going to happen," stop listening. We don't know what's going to happen. I think it's pretty clear that shutting our economy for any period of time causes huge damage, and we're trying to figure out how long this lockdown is going to be. So obviously, property markets are closed, but I think medium term, and I say medium term because I just don't know short term. I think medium term, the fundamentals behind the markets be good. Population strong, and I think will continue to be strong. We have a big shortage in dwellings, which is a key factor. As soon as you have too many, that's when prices fall. But when there's a shortage, they struggle to fall far. They still can fall, which I think they will. But we've also got a central bank which has slashed interest rates to record lows and told us that mortgage rates are going to stay at record lows for at least a year. And I say at least a year. I think mortgage rates will stay very low for a very long time. So there are some supporting factors there, but there are also some stresses which will show up. The more our labour market hurts, the more unemployed people that we see, the more downward pressure we'll get on house prices in general.
Yeah, and certainly the cash and equity, or cash in particular, is king at the moment, and people have been saying that, and I guess it is. It just gives people flexibility in time, and time's a big thing right now. A lot of these firms, they haven't got the cafes and restaurants that open up and they run on an already rag, and this just is going to knock some of them off, which was really sad. But and the other side of that, the investors who are actually cashed up, they're in a good situation. They have got time, they can wait, and there are going to be some pretty damn good buys come out there in the next, whatever it is, 2 to 6 or 7 months, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, just to quote my mate Mike Taylor, who I was chatting to about equity markets the other day, he was like, this is kind of like 08, 09, but it's been sort of jam packed into a very short period of time. And he's very good at picking stocks, and he's taken the approach that, look, there will be some big losers in this, and there will be some very big winners in this as well. And I think you can almost apply that to property market, but it will be there will be some, places and areas and types of dwellings that potentially get hurt in this, but then there's clearly going to be some big winners as well. And depending on your time horizon, the longer you're in it, the better I think chances you'll have.
Yeah. Places like Queenstown is one who I think are in a bit of trouble, mainly because of runs through tourism, and a part of that will be alleviated, I guess, where we can start getting around again. New Zealanders have got nowhere else to go, so a few of them will be going down there, but I'm sure that's not going to make up probably another 70 or 80% they're missing out on from overseas people and workers. I guess that's the other hard thing about Queenstown. It's all the overseas workers that work there that have probably taken off again at the moment. Opportunities there, and I think there's going to be great opportunities. I was having a discussion the other day with some people who were saying if you've still got good property and good locations, as in Queenstown, they'll hold their prices. I'm going, not sure, but certainly I agree with them. The old stock might be about to have a bit of hurt down there.
Yeah, Queenstown's interesting. I think obviously the one market which for me has always been an international market, Queenstown, and one bid up by international buyers, but also the fact that so many international tourists go through there. And to say, well, you're going to lose a foreign tourist and you're going to gain a local tourist, yeah, that's true to some extent. But I'm a Kiwi, and when I go to Queenstown, I don't spend anywhere near as much as a foreign tourist, right? Yeah. Someone shows me a plastic Kiwi for $50, I'm not going to buy it, right? Whereas they'll probably buy 5. Yeah. So there would be a big difference like that. But I think at the end of the day, Queenstown's still one of the most beautiful places, in the world. Yeah. Kiwis love it. International travelers love it. I think it's a matter of time as to how it bounces back.
Yeah, I agree that the time's going to be the massive thing with Queenstown more than probably anywhere in the country. And I guess from your side, the borders, and again, none of us know, but the borders, I guess, aren't going to open until a particular country is pretty well clean, or at least as clean as New Zealand are overseas. I imagine that's how it's going to work.
Yeah, exactly. And we just don't know how that plays out. Let's just assume that tourism is going to be severely hurt for the next 6 months. It'll be drip fed with domestic tourism. We'll all go down to Queenstown at half the price and do what we can, but we're not the same as foreign tourists coming in with foreign cash to spray around. And I think until that foreign tourist returns, it's going to be tough for certain areas like that.
Yeah,
I think will take the longest to recover, and also need the most assistance through this as well. Those tourism operators, because when the foreign tourists come back, hopefully say it's the end of next year, we need those places up and running back to full capacity like they were a couple of months ago.
Yeah, that's going to be the hard thing of when and how they do that. And so that's interesting times coming up, that's for sure. Any other parts of the market, the property market, you see either opportunity or high risk? I mean, you're into risk at the moment, but
no, I think the main point is prepare for some bad times now, and whether that be interesting. Prepare to see house prices fall, commercial prices fall. Some areas will be hit harder than others. Like you say, I'm not an investor like you are. People like you will be able to go in and see the opportunities. But I think if we look through the lens of a medium-term investor to long-term investor, I think the fundamentals are still there. It's still a good market long-term.
Yeah, just like the share market, the crash we just had, sort of thing. I don't know too much about shares, but I know if you don't have to sell, don't sell. You're only going to make money if you sell. And unfortunately, with property, will be a lot of people that do have to sell. Good for real estate agents. We get to sell some more property. It'll be interesting what happens with there. I've never actually talked to you about anything rather than just normal how the world evolves in property. But do you know much about the share market at the moment? It'd be a good time to be buying a bit there at the moment too, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's an interesting. Well, actually, share markets have done pretty well in the last month. I've been surprised at how they've bounced back after such a dramatic fall. But the difficult thing is, it's kind of like property. You're looking at, rather than looking at a house, you're looking at a business, and you're saying, is that business going to be around in 6 months' time? And if you can definitively say yes, and in a lot of cases, actually, you can say, actually, that company's going to be doing even better.
Yeah.
You know, you're buying into those sort of tech stocks and those sort of companies that are doing well in this. But then there are others, some in retail, some in tourism, and that may get hurt quite badly in this, and you're staying away from those sorts. But generally speaking, there's been a lot of stimulus thrown at this. Interest rates are really low. So your valuations of a stock, which uses a discount rate, which is make their future earnings look really, really good. It's just we got no idea what their future earnings are.
Yeah.
So it's difficult times, but I think equity markets start bouncing back towards the end of the year. I think there's another dip coming, but towards the end of the year we'll bounce back into next year, and I think there's enough stimulus and there's enough being thrown at this that asset markets should start doing well next year.
Yeah, no, that will be interesting. I think what are we in now? The second quarter, aren't we? So the second quarter is going to be devastating. But one of the next 2 quarters, we don't know which one it's going to be yet, I guess. The time factor is going to be pretty, a lot going on in the economy, including a lot of house purchases and sales sort of thing for different reasons. Yeah. Oh, that's been fantastic. Got anything else you want to add about this COVID-19 and what's happening? And before we wrap it up.
No, I think that was good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, I'm pleased to have you on. And you did say, and you probably say it all the time, just being a nice guy, Jarrod, that you'll be back sometime. But I thought today was a good now was a good time to be getting you on to talk about things, and especially 3 weeks through this, because it's as I said, a bit of a different conversation than we had where we had no idea, where we are seeing different things of what's going on, and we can guess a little bit cleverer, I guess, than we could 4 weeks ago of where things are going. So I appreciate your time. I know you've got a few chats like this on at the go at the moment, so I'm pleased you snuck us in, and thanks very much for your time again.
Pleasure. Good to speak to you again.
Okay, and thanks for listening and watching again, all the podcast fans, and we'll be back again in 2 weeks, or maybe only a week again in the times we're in. And thanks for watching.